Ashok Datar ji, Shri Sharat Chandrayan, Chief Public Relations Officer, Western Railways, members of Mumbai Transport Forum, friends. Before I begin, I want to recognize the presence here of another railway representative, Shri Nitin Kumar David. He is PRO Western Railway. So thank you both Chandrayan ji and Mr. David. And as Shri Ashok Datar mentioned, all of you have come here braving a heavy downpour. I'll begin, friends, by briefly telling you what are my credentials to talk about this subject. Of course, as most of you here, I have also been a railway commuter for most of my life. And, all of us who travel by railways are both proud of Indian Railways and also dissatisfied. We are proud because there is a certain romance attached to traveling by railways, especially if you are traveling long distance. But over the years, as India has become aspirational India, as India and more Indians get exposed to developments of railway infrastructure, railway services around the world, when they compare what is out there and what is here, there is a growing sense of dissatisfaction. Friends, I had the opportunity and the privilege to work in the Prime Minister's office between 1998 and 2004. And one of the things that I did using the vantage point of the PMO was to get involved in all the good initiatives, policies of various ministries, and the one ministry that was very close to my heart was the Railway Ministry. As you know, Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government is still remembered for one ambitious infrastructure project, that is the Golden Quadrilateral project, linking the 4 metros with 4-lane, 6-lane highways, and of course going forward it was further expanded to include the north-south corridor and the east-west corridor. Just to give a sense of what it meant for India, from independence till year 2000, highways were being built in India at the rate of 11 kilometers a year. In 2003, the rate of construction of highways was 11 kilometers per day. That is how ambitious the Golden Quadrilateral project was. I remember in one of the speeches, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji said, ये न केवल राजमार्ग हैं, अपितु देश के भविष्य को बदलने वाली भाग्य रेखाएं हैं. That these would completely change the destiny, the future of India, and they indeed have. I used to, because of my proximity with the Prime Minister, I used to give sometimes ideas what our government should do. And towards the end of our tenure, we were quite confident that we would come back in 2004. So I said that we have achieved one big thing in the road sector. Now we should have something similar, the equivalent of the Golden Quadrilateral in the railway sector. Of course, in 2004, the NDA was voted out of power and it couldn't be done. But I'm very happy to know that a major initiative announced by the Railway Minister in the government headed by Shri Narendra Modi is to take up the equivalent of the golden quadrilateral in the highway sector in the railway sector, and it is called the diamond quadrilateral. The diamond quadrilateral connecting the 4 metros with high-speed railway network. And when we say high speed, it is trains running at speeds of over 250 kilometers per hour. I worked quite closely with the then Railway Minister in the NDA government, Mamata Banerjee, and one of the significant initiatives of that time was the setting up of the RailTel Corporation. As you know, that was the beginning of the telecom revolution in India, and we felt that railway should use the unique strength that they possess, that is nearly 60,000 kilometers of railway network of dedicated railway lines. If this right of way can be used for laying optic fiber network, it would be unrivaled. It would be much better than anything that either Reliance or any other telecom company that was laying fiber optic network those days. None had the kind of strength that Indian Railways had. So our idea was that Indian Railways should take the lead in becoming a kind of a telecom entity, not just railways. Of course, for various reasons, the corporation was established and it's doing some work, but nothing as ambitious as we had envisioned. When I look back, there were 2 other good things that we had envisioned and that was part of our agenda. The Prime Minister, Vajpayee ji, in his Independence Day announcement on August 15, 2003, he made 2 important announcements. One was National Mission for Cleanliness in Indian Railways, something that every single commuter of Indian Railways feels very strongly about. The other was National Mission for Technological Innovation for Rail Safety. Between 2004 and 2008-09, I had no association with railways, but when Mamata Banerjee returned as Railway Minister in the UPA government, she asked me to become her honorary advisor and also serve as a member of the expert committee that she had established, which was headed by Amit Mitra, Shri Amit Mitra, who was then Secretary General of FICCI, and now he is Finance Minister in the government of West Bengal. One of the many things that our expert committee did was bring out this Indian Railways Vision 2020 document. This Vision 2020 document was tabled in Parliament in 2010, giving a decadal perspective on how railways should be developed. And I played a small role in preparing it. I have been writing on railway matters from time to time, and some of these articles are displayed in the corridor. I said all this just to establish my credentials to speak on the subject. Before I come to Railway Budget 2014-15, let me give a snapshot of the main features of Indian Railways. I said that we ought to be proud of our railway system. It is the 4th largest in the world after China, Russia, USA. China is number 1, and a little later I'll tell you, friends, that China was way, way behind India, even as recently as 1980. Our total network is 65,000 kilometers. Railways run 12,600 trains and carry 23 million passengers per day, connecting slightly over 7,000 railway stations. Indian Railways also carry 7,400 freight trains and carry 3 million tons of freight every day. The total employee strength, it is after defense, it is the largest government employer, 1.3 million people. But as our colleagues from railways would testify, there was a time the employee strength was 1.7 million. It is gradually coming down. Indian Railways have 17 zones. Is that right? 17? And 68 divisions. Indian Railways are not just the nation's lifeline in terms of mass transport, but they also carry out yet another very important national service, which was mentioned in the Railway Minister's budget. The railways carry food grains for FCI, they carry fodder, they carry other goods that are entrusted by the government in terms of disasters. In times of disasters, they also come to the aid of the nation in many other ways. And all this, something that all of us should know, is done in a non-commercial way. The railways bear a cost of 20,000 crore rupees each year for carrying out what are called social obligation. And this 20,000 crore is not reimbursed to the railways, because it is assumed and it is understood that it is the duty of the Indian Railways to do all this. Fine, Indian Railways can do this much better than any other mode of mass transport. But shouldn't railways be remunerated for this? 20,000 crores is not a small amount. I'm mentioning this because in the Railway Minister's budget speech, there was one very telling piece of information. He said that in 2013-14, that is a year gone by, gross traffic receipts were 1,39,000 crore. Total working expenses were 1,30,000 crore, which means it works out to an operating ratio of almost 94%. So, the minister said, in other words, railways spend 94 paise out of every rupee earned, leaving only 6 paise as surplus. Only 6 paise as surplus. And in fact, the surplus is also going down. After paying obligatory dividend, and friends, this is another thing that we should know, that Indian Railways pay yearly dividend to the government of India to the tune of about 8,000 crores. And lease charges, after paying dividend and lease charges, the surplus was about 11,700 crores in 2007-8, and it is estimated to be only 602 crores this year. So, surplus is going down. Now, with so little money to spend on so many projects, it is understandable that the resources get spread very thin. And when resources get spread very thin, what you end up with is very heavy, almost shocking levels of cost overruns and time overruns. Now here is another, those of you who listened to the minister's speech or read about it, you know, the ministry announces new projects each year, and it's no wonder, because there is so much pressure on the minister from members of parliament, from cutting across political parties, to include new projects. New projects are included that further makes the spread thinner. He says there has been focus on sanctioning projects rather than completing them. In the last 30 years, as many as 676 projects were sanctioned worth 1,57,000 crore. Of these, only 317, that is out of 676, only 317 projects could be completed in the last 30 years. So 359 projects remain to be completed, but just pay attention to the next figure. And these 359 projects will require 1,82,000 crore rupees for completion, which means that 30 years ago, 676 projects needed 1.57 lakh crores, and today a much lesser number of projects, that is 359 projects, require 1,82,000 crore. The cost overrun is enormous. The minister also said that in the last 10 years, 99 new line projects worth 60,000 crore were sanctioned. 10 years, 99 new line projects were sanctioned worth 60,000 crore, out of which only one project is complete till date. In fact, there are 4 projects that are more than 30 years old and yet not completed. And therefore, the minister lamented. He said it is unheard of a business that has a monopoly. It is unheard of a business that has a monopoly, that has nearly 125 crore customer base, that has 100% sale on advance payment, but still is starved of funds. This was the minister's lament. But friends, as I will subsequently tell you, this lament, what is the source of this problem? The source of the problem is the fact that Indian Railways are a monopoly. To somehow mitigate this resource crunch, railways have been demanding, officials of the Indian Railways have been demanding hike in passenger fares. And after nearly 10 years, is it 10 years or 11 years, the passenger fares were hiked just before the budget, something that was quite improper. The passenger fare hike, if the government wanted to do, the right occasion for doing that is the budget and not something before the budget. Anyway, the passenger fares were hiked by nearly 14.1%. And many newspapers applauded the government. The government has finally bitten the bullet. But friends, how much did this fare hike actually yield to the government? It's 8,000 crores. So the impression being created, and I really feel that somehow the government is not communicating the proper numbers and the proper logic to the people of India, as a result of which it is actually getting unmerited criticism. Because when the fares were hiked, it was made out as if the government needs the ministry needs so many funds for completing projects, etc. But the actual revenue increase due to the 14.1% hike was only 8,000 crores. Now, how does it compare with the needs of the Indian Railways? In the budget speech, the minister himself mentioned that just to complete the ongoing projects, not the new projects, just to complete the ongoing projects, Indian Railways need 50,000 crore rupees each year for the next 10 years. That is 5 lakh crore rupees. 50,000 crores. And what is the fare hike yielding? 8,000 crores. So the people ought to have been made aware of the fact that yes, we need to increase the fare hikes, but this is not really going to make a big difference. You cannot, with 8,000 crores or the very low level of surplus, it is not possible to meet the needs and the requirements and the aspirations of the people. The minister, friends, presented two big ideas in the budget, and they of course have suddenly further raised the expectations of the people. What were these two big ideas? One was, of course, it concerns people in Mumbai, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train. And, as I mentioned earlier, the Diamond Quadrilateral of high-speed railway network connecting the 4 metros. Now, the minister's own figures, the high-speed Diamond Quadrilateral network is going to cost 9 lakh crore rupees. 9 lakh crore rupees. And the bullet train is going to cost 60,000 crore rupees as of today's estimates. Now, how much did the minister earmark for this very ambitious Diamond Quadrilateral project? That's going to cost 9 lakh crore rupees. He earmarked 100 crores. So, one of my main observations about the budget is that it is very vague on how it is going to mobilize resources for both the ongoing projects as well as the new ambitious projects. There is no clarity. I'm saying this because this government, the government of Shri Narendra Modi, has come into office with huge expectations. But somehow this budget has not lived up to these expectations. In the first half of the railway minister's speech, it's all, it gives a very stark picture of the crisis, the financial crisis before Indian Railways. But after that, what is the roadmap for the future? It's quite vague. There is almost total reliance on PPP, public-private partnership, and FDI, foreign direct investment, for funding the financial requirements of Indian Railways. But the minister's own admission was that last year the estimates of PPP were unmet. They were quite short of the target. So, if last year the Indian Railways could not meet the PPP target, what is the guarantee that the much larger volume of PPP that the government is expecting this year and in the years ahead, how is it going to be met? So one hopes that in the months to come, the government lays out a very clear and attractive policy for getting private investment, either as purely private investment projects or PPP projects. I must mention here, friends, that there are some positive initiatives mentioned in the budget. The minister has pledged to move Indian Railways towards paperless office. All the offices of Indian Railways would be paperless in the next 5 years, which is a great thing. The other big initiative that deserves to be applauded is that the Indian Railways are going to digitize and GIS map all the land assets, and Indian Railways have enormous land assets. And I'll come to the railways land assets in Mumbai a little later. The third initiative that deserves to be applauded is that there's going to be port connectivity projects on priority in tandem with Sagarmala. See, Sagarmala is another very ambitious infrastructure project of the new government. Of course, the idea has been, it originated much earlier. Sagarmala is a garland of new port projects all along India's long coast. So to connect these new ports and also the expanded or modernized existing ports, the railways are going to undertake very efficient connectivity projects, which is much needed and therefore to be applauded. And of course, coal connectivity projects to facilitate faster transportation of coal to power stations. And I must add here one more very welcome announcement by the minister, and that is for energy conservation. Indian Railways are going to turn to renewable energy in a significant way, and therefore all the railway establishments are going to have rooftop solar installations, something that the ORF's own recent publication, Mumbai Solar Mission, has recommended, and we want to come to you for this, because my colleague has written to both Central Railway and Western Railway that the headquarters of these two zones should take the lead in implementing rooftop solar policy that the minister has announced. Friends, you know, whenever we think of the future of Indian Railways, it is only natural to make a comparison with China. And I mentioned earlier that even though today China is number one in the world in terms of railway infrastructure, some of the things that I'm going to mention here will tell you how fast China has overtaken the rest of the world, including India. As we all know, Indian Railways were born in Mumbai in 1853. The first railway line was between Mumbai, that is today's CST, and Thane. Yeah, maybe Kolaba, to Thane. 1853. The first railway line in China was laid in 1876. So we were 1853, they came much later, 1876. India had 53,396 kilometers of railway network, in 1947 when we became independent. And I'm talking about the divided India, not counting East Pakistan or West Pakistan. The network in independent India was 53,396 kilometers. At that time, mainland China was only 27,000 kilometers. Even as late as 1980, China's rail network was much smaller than that of India. By 2010 or rather 2014, at present, our network has expanded to about 65,000 kilometers. That is from 1947, 53,400 to now 65,000. In contrast, China's network this year has crossed 100,000 kilometers. From 27,000 in 1947, 1948 to over 1 lakh kilometers, whereas we are still 65,000. And it's going to be 1,20,000 kilometers over the next 6 years. That is, over the next 10 years, China is going to add 20,000 kilometer new lines, especially in central and western China, which are relatively less developed. Friends, of these 100,000 kilometers, 10% is already high speed. 10%, that is about 10,000 kilometers in China, is already high speed railway network. China runs its heavy haul freight trains at 120 kilometers per hour. In India, the average speed of the freight train is about 30 kilometers. China invested 14 lakh crore rupees in the last 3 years alone. 14 lakh crore rupees over the last 3 years. And our Indian Railways Vision 2020, our recommendation was, this was, of course, as I said, it was presented to Parliament in 2010, and its recommendation was that Indian Railways require 14 lakh crore rupees over the next 20 years, over the next 10 years. That is, by 2020, 14 lakh crore rupees. China has already spent 14 lakh crores in the last 3 years. Just to give some other, where we stand and where China stands, I had an opportunity to visit China about a year and a half back. And I traveled from Beijing to Shanghai. The distance between Beijing and Shanghai is a little longer than the distance between Mumbai and Delhi. It covers 1,460 kilometers in 5 hours. Whereas a much smaller distance between Mumbai and Delhi, the fastest train takes about 15-16 hours. And China is going to have 90 bullet trains a day in each direction, one every 15 minutes. They are already the world leaders in bullet trains. I remember that at least the past 5, 6, 7 years, every railway minister in the budget speech talks about modernization of our railway stations, beginning with New Delhi and CST. This announcement is there in every budget speech. Nothing happens. and I'm going to show you a small clip from YouTube. Almost all the major railway stations in China, they are like airports. You know, just about 15 days back, our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, made a very welcome announcement. You know, when he was inaugurating the new railway line in Jammu Kashmir, he said, our railway stations should resemble our new airports. It's a good thing that a Prime Minister is saying this, because this is aspiration. But if you see the railway stations in China, they already are as good as their airports. In friends in Beijing, the main tourist attraction is not just their, their absolutely futuristic airport, which is today the world's largest, but also the world's largest railway station in Beijing, South Beijing Railway Station. I'm saying all this because the people expect speed. This is what our Prime Minister is saying: speed, scale, skill. Indian railways must catch up with people's aspiration for speed. May I request Aparna just to show this small clip? Beijing South Railway Station. Expansion and modernization. It is not through internal resource generation. Nowhere in the world can railways be expanded, modernized, only through internal resource generation, especially if it means raising passenger fares or freight. In India, it is simply not possible. I mentioned to you that even a fairly steep hike of 14% yielded only 8,000 crores. As far as freight is concerned, railways have no room whatsoever to increase freight rates, because since independence, at 1947, railway share in cargo transport was 80% plus. Today it has come down to 33%. Which means that over the years, railways have lost their market share in freight to the road sector. Of course, that is in some ways inevitable, also welcome in some ways. But we must remember that freight transport by Indian railways is far more environment friendly, unlike the road sector. It also means far less road accidents, because people killed in road accidents and people who unfortunately get killed, let's forget Mumbai for the time being, is much less. So it's already come down to 33%. So if the railways further increase freight rates, then the business is going to shift to the roads. And as we all know, and as all of us should know, passenger fares are subsidized, cross-subsidized by the earnings through freight. So there is no scope for Indian railways to mobilize resources through freight or through passenger fares. Therefore, the only way the ongoing projects as well as the new projects can be funded is if the government comes forward to fund it externally. Of course, there is a mention of, as I mentioned earlier, there's very strong focus on PPP and FDI, but frankly, these alone, at least in the foreseeable future, are not going to yield adequate resources. In China, the government, almost all the funding for the expansion is coming from government. Of course, since it's a one-party rule, they have much better leeway on managing and transferring resources, but it cannot be a pretext that we don't have that freedom. The government has to generate resources. Is this ready? Yeah. Yeah. He was, he visited China very recently, and I'm sure that he has many more experiences to narrate of the railway infrastructure in China, not just, Mumbai, not just Beijing, Shanghai, but even if you go to some of the smaller towns, what you see is more or less comparable to what you saw just now. Friends, I shall conclude the first part of my remarks, that is about the railway budget, by just reading out some suggestions I had made in a column, suggestions to the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. I would like to read. I said, to change this situation, the current situation in Indian Railways, here are 10 plus 1 suggestions. 10 plus 1 suggestions for Dr. Manmohan Singh, who now has the railway portfolio with him. Because as perhaps some of you will know, there was a considerably long time when the railway portfolio was directly under the Prime Minister himself. 1. Please make railway reforms as part of an overarching national mass transport policy one of your highest priorities. Railway reforms. in the railway budget speech of Sadanand Gowda, he also has referred to some structural reforms, but in my view, they fall far short of what is really required. Don't give the railway ministry to anyone. Drive it from the PMO, because all of you, who know how railway ministry has been handled. Unfortunately, so many of our former ministers, and I'm not saying anything about the new minister because he's only about 1.5 months into office. Their focus was more regional and not visionary. Unfortunately, those who know the working of Indian Railways, the Railway Ministry, it is so insulated from the rest of the government that it is really difficult to drive reforms. I'm not casting any aspersions, any comments on the railways, because in some ways you are absolutely great. I think Indian Railways deserve the gold prize for punctuality, for many things. It's in spite of all the odds, you are running the system, for which you need to be applauded. But going forward, so much more needs to be done, and in my opinion, funds crunch is not the only problem. In fact, a far bigger problem is the way Indian Railways are governed. My third suggestion was and continues to be, stop having a separate railway budget. There is no need for a separate railway budget. 4, disband the railway board, corporatize and decentralize Indian Railways. Friends, in China, in March last year, 2013, they took a very bold decision. China simply disbanded the Ministry of Railways. There is no Ministry of Railways in China. They converted the Ministry of Railways into China Rail Corporation. It's a corporation which now can mobilize resources in very many different ways and is autonomous from the government. Liberate our talented railway officials from the insular cadre mentality. I have seen so much of this, such and such a person is from the mechanical cadre, from the civil cadre, from this cadre. This mentality is not really in tune with the requirements of how to run a great organization in today's times, and give them attractive new opportunities for career development, as has happened in the telecom sector. Friends, you see, until before 1990, there was only DOT, Department of Telecom. So landlines and even the initial, there was just no growth in the telecom sector. The fear when competition was introduced was what will happen to our employees. But let me tell you, friends, in the last 10-15 years, no one has lost job in the telecom sector. There's been such a huge expansion of employment in the telecom sector because of competition, because of demonopolization. And therefore, all the very talented people in the railway establishment, and there are enormously talented people in the railway establishment, there is no way of them having job insecurity. Now, the next point I made was take railway unions into confidence, convincing them that reforms will create more jobs. Today, railway unions are very powerful, and there are so many unions of different levels. So the need for reforms has to be communicated to the railway unions, their leaders, that don't fear reform, don't fear change, be partners of change. Then introduce, I had said this in 2012, Introduce far-sighted policies that open the floodgates of private investment and public-private partnerships into expansion and modernization of Indian railways. If India's private sector companies can create world-class airports and airlines, if they can build world-class highways and expressways, they can also, in collaboration with restructured Indian railways, build new tracks, new stations, and better passenger and freight train services. Just coming to this better freight train services, friends, in China, in Japan, the freight service run by the railway companies is door to door. Just as our courier companies, they take a parcel from wherever you are and they reach it wherever you want it to go. Now, does today Indian Railways provide that kind of service? No. It only provides service from one railway station to another railway station. It's not end to end. Begin hiving off Mumbai's suburban railway system into a separate corporation with a mandate to run both the existing network and the state government's proposed metro system under a unified command. We already have an excellent proof of concept in Delhi Metro led by E. Sridharan, a visionary. 9. Implement the Delhi-Mumbai Freight Corridor and the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, two super ambitious infrastructure projects on war footing. Please note that China built the Beijing-Shanghai bullet train service a year ahead of schedule. The bullet service between Beijing and Shanghai was built and commissioned a year ahead of schedule. My 10th suggestion was encourage Indian companies, including IRCON. IRCON is one of the railway's own railway infrastructure development corporation with enormous experience of doing projects both in India and abroad. Encourage Indian companies, including IRCON, to become better than the big MNCs like Bombardier and Siemens and ABB in railway technology, manufacture and infrastructure building. Friends, as was mentioned in the railway minister in his budget speech, we still import a lot of railway equipment from abroad. Why? Why should we do so? Our own indigenous industry today is developed enough to do this. So these were my 10 suggestions to the Prime Minister. As I said, I made 10 plus 1 suggestion. So the 11th suggestion to Dr. Manmohan Singh was, if you cannot do this, make way for a leader who can. And I hope that the leader who has replaced Dr. Manmohan Singh will take Indian Railways to great heights. Now, I won't spend much time on Mumbai's needs because I hope that will come in our question answer session. But I want to just expand on one of the points that I made earlier, that it's high time that Mumbai brought all its mass transport systems under one unified integrated command. Today we have the old suburban railway services run by Western Railway, Central Railway. Then there is monorail, there is metro rail, there is BEST, and of course the vast potential or the considerable potential of coastal transport has not been tapped at all, and how to integrate that with railways and bus transport. The time has come, looking at the needs of Mumbai, and when I say Mumbai, not just today's Mumbai, but the MMR region, Mumbai metropolitan region, which is far bigger than Mumbai. All this needs to be brought under one unified governance system. which is what UMTA was all about, Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority, which the Ministry of Urban Development has proposed and which has not been implemented in Maharashtra, in Mumbai. And friends, in the budget speech of Sadanand Gowda, there is indeed a mention, a very happy mention of the same idea, but not so explicitly. And I hope that we make it explicit. He says, giving boost to suburban traffic. He says, urban transport, with the challenges posed by the steadily increasing urban population concentration in metros and in million-plus cities, a holistic approach to urban transport is required. A smooth and seamless intermodal access is essential to improve urban mobility, and therefore a passenger-centric focus will be given to urban transport infrastructure creation. This is the promise of the new government. Then he says, we will coordinate with other transport ministries and urban bodies to develop optimal systems of integration of railways with other transport modes. Now, this is a very general concept of integration of various transport systems, but specifically for Mumbai, the time has come for all the activists, and especially activists of Mumbai Transport Forum, to further crystallize this idea and say that Mumbai needs a single mass transport authority which plans, implements, and even runs the services. If Delhi, you should just see, those of you who visit Delhi, the face of Delhi has been changed by Delhi Metro. Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon, now even Faridabad, everything is being now connected by Delhi Metro. Why? Because it's a separate corporation. Why can't we do the same? And we can do it much better. We at the Observer Research Foundation have taken up a few aspects of Mumbai's suburban railway services. 4 years ago, we brought out a report on sanitation on the suburban railway network. The minister, in his budget speech, again has talked about cleanliness. I hope they begin with Mumbai. Even after our report, even after it was filed as a PIL in the High Court, there is no significant improvement. Then, of course, there is a problem that my colleagues Dhaval Desai, Rishi, and others have studied and almost completed. The most shocking aspect of nearly 3,000 people getting killed each year on the suburban railway system, which is what is highlighted by this poster. And friends, I want to especially draw your attention to what Dr. Anil Kakodkar committee, which was appointed by the Ministry of Railways to look into the safety problems of Indian Railways, what this committee has said about this shocking reality in Mumbai. Says, no civilized society can accept such massacre on their railway system. Reluctance of the Indian Railways to own up to the casualties, which do not fall under the purview of accidents, but are nevertheless accidents on account of trains, can by no means be ignored. Dr. Anil Kakodkar, commenting on deaths in Mumbai in his report on railway safety submitted to the Railway Ministry in February 2012. This study of ours will be soon out. I think both the government and the people and the municipal corporation and the state government of Maharashtra, all of us must work together to stop these deaths, these avoidable, totally avoidable deaths. It's a shame on India. It's a shame on our city. So looking forward to the new integrated, modern mass transport system in Mumbai, I think that this must be our first priority. So friends, I thank you all for listening to me patiently, although it's more than an hour, much more than what Vijay Shri had allotted to me. So sorry for that. But let's have some question answers and take this discussion forward. Thank you very much.